Today we're talking about how to forgive yourself for hurting someone you love. We've all done it, whether we've done it intentionally or unintentionally. But the reality is our soul has no interest in harming or bringing harm to anyone. And so even if it happens, inevitably we often have that nagging feeling inside of us that just won't go away when we know something we've done has caused harm and we long to forgive ourselves for hurting someone we love. I'm Kim Marie, and this channel is all about supporting women to step into their most empowered self so they can live their most empowered and fulfilled life. All right, hurting someone we love. How to forgive ourselves for hurting someone we love. Hurting someone we love is the last thing we want to do. We don't really want to hurt anyone, but it happens. And so today we're going to talk about why we struggle to forgive ourselves, what forgiveness really is, steps to truly forgive ourselves, and what to remember to truly move forward after we have gone through this process of forgiving ourselves and after the process of hurting someone we love. So why do we struggle so much to forgive ourselves? We beat ourselves up. We can't let go of it. We wish we could change it. We play the story over and over and over in our minds. Why do we struggle so much? Well, one of the top reasons is that we've literally been taught that we're sinners, right? And we are bad. And at the core, there's something wrong with us. Our culture, our patriarchal dominance culture, pounds this into us through our systemic religions and education. We're always trying to measure up. We're taught literally from the time we are born that we are not enough. And so we have this not enoughness in us, and it makes us terrified of making a mistake, terrified of messing up. And often we don't even intentionally hurt anyone, especially the people that we love, but it does happen. And so why we struggle to forgive ourselves for that happening is we basically are immersed in a culture that tells us these kinds of things are absolutely unacceptable. Mistakes, failure, messing up, hurting anyone, etc. are unacceptable. Why? Because we're a sinner. We're wrong. We're bad. We are unworthy. And this is what makes it so challenging for us to truly forgive ourselves. We don't really understand what forgiveness is either. So what is forgiveness? Well, if we look at the word forgive, for is similar to the word forward, right? I like to think of it in terms of like we're giving something to the future. This is part of where the laws of nature or the laws of the universe come into effect. It's called the law of cause and effect. Some people think of it as the law of karma. And ultimately what we're talking about here is the idea that when we forgive, we trust in the laws of nature. We trust in the laws of the universe. We give it to the future. We give it forward to be addressed as it will be addressed in nature. Forgiveness is not something about forgetting or just letting someone walk all over us again or hurting or allowing ourselves to repeat our poor behavior, right? What it means is we say, okay, I have to let this go. This happened. It is what it is. I need to let it go, with the understanding, especially when it comes to hurting people we love, something we did when we're trying to forgive ourselves for hurting someone we love, we have to look at, okay, why am I forgiving myself? Why do I want to forgive myself? Most of the time it's so we can move forward, we can move on. So we need to just give it to the future. That's first and foremost, this idea of understanding what forgiveness is. And so if someone hurts us, it's the same thing. Now, I'm not saying we don't do anything about it in the process, and we're going to get to that. But the simple concept of understanding what it means to forgive, it doesn't mean to forget, it doesn't mean to ignore behavior and not use caution to change it or be wary of it if it's from someone else, right? It simply means we're letting go, we're giving it forward, we're trusting in the powers of the universe to bring the balance and harmony that it always does. So let's say, for example, we've yelled at our child, okay? And we struggle to forgive ourselves because we really didn't want to make them feel that way. We feel like now we've scarred them for life and they're just going to be ruined. We've said things we didn't really mean. We didn't have good control over our emotions. And now, oh my gosh, we're beating ourselves up because we're terrified we've ruined our kid's life, right? Well, the reality is difficult and challenging and uncomfortable and even traumatic things happen to every single one of us. It doesn't condone it. It doesn't justify it. But when we can start to understand that we're not going to do anything by rehashing what happened, we need to give it to the future. Just trust that it will move forward, but bring ourselves to this place of how do I forgive myself? Now, I have a video on how to be a great role model to your kids that you also might be interested in if this is an actual example for you. Ultimately, what we're trying to do is honor and understand these things happen. Now, we don't want to condone them. We don't want to forget them. We want to know that this can happen within us, and we want to do our deep inner work. And I've got lots of videos on this channel and lots of programs. And as a coach, we can work together to help you create emotional mastery, to help you step into the best version of yourself so that it's less and less likely that you're going to do these kinds of things that inadvertently hurt others that you love, okay? There's so much work we can do and we need to do in order to do that. But first and foremost, forgiving ourselves is about letting it move forward and doing the best that we can to change it from here on out. So how to forgive yourself when you've hurt someone? I want to offer some steps that help you to truly forgive yourself and move on. These steps come from a book by Clarissa Pinkola Estes called Women Who Run with the Wolves. I love what she has to say about these steps in the process of forgiveness. I think it can be really helpful to us and really powerful considerations to contemplate and look at as we figure out how to move forward, how to let it go, how to give it to the laws of nature, to the universe. The first in her steps is to forego. All right. And this is really about going without or declining or refraining from. So it's like removing from the situation or taking our inner stories and taking them out and saying, okay, I'm going to decline those. I'm going to go without those. So in other words, when you get those stories repeating in your mind that keep you saying, oh, I'm so stupid. How could I have done that? Why did I yell at my kid? We need to forego. We need to let them go. We need to remove them and decline those stories. I like to think of any of the stories, whether we're dealing with an issue of not being able to forgive ourselves or we're just dealing with that inner mind chatter. I like to think of it like a parrot on our shoulder that's just like constantly talking in our ear and trying to tell us that we've done something wrong or we've screwed up or we're not enough. And I like to just imagine like I'm brushing that right off my shoulder. I am declining that. I'm going to move on and understand that now that I know better, I can do better, as the great Maya Angelou says. All right. The second step in Clarissa Pinkola Estes' ideas of forgiveness is to forbear. To forbear is to let alone, to be without being consumed. So in other words, we've done this. We yelled at our kid. We did something that hurt someone we love. Okay. We do have to forbear it. We have to let it be and not allow it to consume us. We have to understand that it happened and allow ourselves to be in it, which partly is about owning it, right? Acknowledging, yes, I've done this. And we want to take responsibility for it and bear it. And in part, this is about being silent and exercising self-control around it so that we're not allowing ourselves to get consumed and encapsulated in it. We're not allowing those voices to constantly harp upon us and allow us to get stuck in it. We calm down, we get silent, we get still, we allow ourselves to just be with it and exercise a certain amount of self-control. And that also helps us then, as a practice, to not repeat the pattern, to recognize what we've done and practice that sense of self-control and that silence and that centering and to be with it rather than try to do anything we can to escape it, deny it, ignore it, etc. We actually have to face it. We have to face it. We can't let it keep harping on us. That's what we do to forego. And we can't ignore it at the same time. So the next thing she talks about, in addition to forego and forbear, is to forget. Now, I did say we don't want to forget, but what she's talking about here is the idea that we're losing the remembrance of, for the sake of laying the emotions to rest. We're letting the emotional charge on it go. We're not holding on to this memory. You know how you talk with certain people, and even if you have apologized profusely, tried everything you could do to rebuild trust, to make it better, to change your behavior, to do something, and they just can't let it go. We do that to ourselves also, right? They don't forget it. They refuse to stop harping on it and bringing it up, bringing it into the moment, right? And so what we want to consider is that this is about laying the emotion to rest. It's not so much about not learning from it. So we want to have it in our mind from the standpoint of, oh, I'm aware of that. I don't want to ever do that again. But we want to let it go from the standpoint of, I'm not going to let this keep coming up again and again. Once I move through this process of forgiving myself, that's it. I'm moving on. The story's done. It's old news. It doesn't need to be repeated again. It doesn't need to stay in our memory as a constant way of, see, you were bad, you were terrible, remember that time you did this, that was awful. We have to be willing to go through this process and lay the emotional charge to rest and kind of let go of the memory of it from that perspective, but hang on to the understanding of it and the learning of it that we get. Just as a simple example, I often teach this concept of an emotional integration exercise, where this is about allowing the emotion to move through us. When we say that we want to lay the emotion to rest, we don't want to brush the emotions under the rug. My Solace program for women is amazing at offering all these different kinds of tools that help us do these things, that help us to forgive ourselves, help us to lay emotions to rest, help us to stop harping with this voice in our head that keeps making us think we're not worthy, right? And so we want to find these kinds of tools and find this kind of support to help us do these things. And then the final piece in the forgiveness exercise is ultimately to forgive. This is really the ultimate definition of forgiveness, where we can stop feeling angry, we can stop feeling resentful. To forgive is also defined as canceling the debt. It's like, you're done, it's over, paid in full, we move forward. Now, of course, if you've hurt someone you love and they do want to keep bringing it up, they may struggle to forgive. And you can ask for forgiveness, but what we're talking about here in this video is forgiving yourself. You have to forgive yourself. And I guarantee you, when you can really move to that place of forgiving yourself, canceling the debt on yourself, knowing that you're learning from it, you're going to move forward, you've faced it, you've not let the emotion consume you, all of these pieces, other people are going to be way more likely to forgive you as well. Because when you're really going through this process, you're owning it, you're taking responsibility for it, you're actually making an effort not to do the same thing again and again. And that's going to change the relationship you have with others, and others are going to start to feel that and trust you more. It may take them longer. Sometimes they might not ever do it, but it is important to forgive yourself. So part of that process is maybe creating a new story without any kind of attachment to a specific ending of that story and how it's absolutely going to work out. But rather than constantly harping on yourself about how bad and awful you are for yelling at your kid, maybe you create a new story that says, you know, I'm striving to be the best parent and best role model I can be, and I'm learning every day to control my emotions and to heal my own wounds so that I don't yell at my children anymore. And I love that I'm learning, and I'm appreciative that I'm learning, and I'm owning my mistakes, and I'm doing the best that I can to make them right with those that I hurt. And that's the ultimate goal. This is about a practice of moving forward. That's really how we can forgive ourselves, is by practicing showing up differently. And that includes the stories that we tell ourselves. We also need to appreciate the gifts of the situation. I know it's hard to think about that. If we hurt someone we love and we desperately don't want to do that, how can we possibly think of that as a gift? Well, when we do that, it wakes something up in us. It triggers our conscience. It opens us up to a greater level of consciousness. If we snap at our partner or yell at our child or, get really impatient with a friend or whatever it is, on some level, doing that wakes us up to our own wounds. It wakes us up to things that are out of balance within us. That's a gift. That is part of the way the universe mirrors back to us through people, through circumstances, through situations, what we need to work on. And so one of the ways to forgive yourself is to appreciate the gift of what happened and understand that it is a gift. It's a gift to help you awaken to your own inner wisdom and guidance and not operate out of the subconscious emotional triggers that often happen, okay, and that cause us to behave poorly. And ultimately, another aspect of forgiving ourselves is to let love be the force at play in everything that we do. We can ask ourselves, is my behavior loving? How can it be more loving? How can I show love as a way of expressing my remorse and trying to make it right? Let love be the force. Let love be your guide. Ask love. Ask the force of love for guidance and wisdom for guidance, because it will give you guidance as to what to do to move forward. All right, we can't change what's been done, but we can tap into how to behave moving forward. The most important thing to remember in trying to forgive ourselves for hurting someone we love is to move forward with confidence. We need to remember that disappointment is absolutely inevitable. Every time we make a choice, no matter what it is, we will disappoint something. The choice that we don't select may have people or situations or circumstances that are ultimately disappointed because we didn't choose it. This is part of life. We often very unintentionally hurt someone we love or just hurt others in general because we didn't choose that. I mean, you could look at it at the most rudimentary way of saying, well, I chose to eat at this restaurant and not this restaurant tonight. And this restaurant, arguably, like you could say, oh, I've hurt those owners because I didn't choose them and they're going to be disappointed and they're going to be sad. Of course, they're not aware that you didn't choose them, but it's the energy that I'm talking about here. There's always a disappointment, right? Something or someone loses every time we make a choice. And so sometimes the ways in which we hurt someone we love are very benign, very unintentional, very inevitable because we have to make a choice, right? If you're a parent, going back to the concept of being a parent and yelling at your kid, right? Yelling at your kid is something, yeah, you can choose to yell or you can choose to have emotional control. But let's say you have two children, they both have events that night and they both want you to be at their event. You can't. You just can't. And maybe you do the best that you can. Maybe your partner goes to one child's event and you go to the other event and you do the best you can to honor both. Or maybe, like me, you're a single parent and you can only choose one. And it's not about choosing favorites or anything else, right? It's about maybe choosing the one who would understand the least if you don't go, or who needs your support the most, or who doesn't have enough other people around them to support them in whatever it is that they're doing, right? Or maybe it's, let's say it's 2 parent evenings that you have to go to meet with the child's teacher, right? Which child is struggling more? And maybe you should go to that parent night. It's not about favorites or choosing the best, but there's always a level of disappointment, right? The child might be disappointed. The teacher might be disappointed if you choose to go to the other event or whatever it is. There's always going to be disappointment. I actually have a blog post called Self-Betrayal, How to End It for Good. And I'll put the link in the description so that you can read that. And it goes into this concept of disappointment and how it's inevitable. But we do need to understand that it's inevitable and be willing to simply move forward with confidence that we've made our choice. We're learning from our experiences. We're learning from our mistakes. I think it's so important to remember this. So be sure to check out my blog and even check out my Solace program. The link for that will be in the description. These are things that will give you so many tools. I have so many free tools and guidance, so much guidance with the videos and my blog and other things like that. So I invite you to check those out. And then of course I have some of my paid programs, which I always keep very reasonable and very affordable to make them a place where you can continue to step onto this path of empowerment so that you can live your most fulfilled life. I invite you to check out the links, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.